Hi, Carla. I have to admit that the audio journals assignment are pretty daunting for me, but I'm going to try my best to get this done. And I'm trying to treat it as a conversation that I would have with you, except for just pretty much one-sided. The first messages about crime that I ever received was that crime is really bad. I was really taught a significant difference between good and evil. It was a very black and white version of criminal and victim. And in my early years, I really equated disobedience as crime when I was young. And I think that really has to do with my parents' version of discipline. Also, I stole a Cadbury cream egg when I was 3 years old, and I didn't really equate that with crime necessarily or even stealing. But my mom made a pretty big deal about it and had the manager come, and they told me they were going to throw me in jail and everything. And it pretty much served its purpose as a deterrent, because outside of the occasional couple of pens from work going home in my pocket, I have not stolen anything since. But what this taught me was that crime is a really serious and scary thing. The article, one of the articles that we read this week, talked about crime and portrayal in the media, and specifically movies. And I also remember this is one of my earliest memories of crime as well, was that it allows us a safe distance to explore our fears or fascination with crime. And I remember wanting to see the movie Silence of the Lambs, and my mom for years told me I couldn't see it because she knew better and knew that it was too mature for me. So I ended up watching it at a friend's house behind my mom's back, and it ended up being terrifying. I couldn't sleep for weeks. So those were my earliest messages about crime, really. What I remember thinking or learning about crime, really, my family believed in capital punishment. And initially I took that stance as well. But this was also based off of a blind faith that the justice system is just, which I've learned that it significantly fails a number of people. And during my education at Western, and even prior to that, I've really learned of the prevalence of wrongful convictions, and I can't even imagine supporting capital punishment because of the possibility of wrongful conviction. I believe that there are plenty of people that are guilty of what they've been convicted of, but the possibility that somebody is wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death is just, I don't really want anything to do with that. I don't believe that it's right. And one of the most meaningful ways that I learned about crime was through firsthand experience. My mom was single for a long time after she divorced my dad, and she was with a man who experienced significant PTSD and psychosis. And it was a significant domestic violence situation when I was very young. I've been through a number of thefts and breaking and entering in my home. I had my car stolen from my driveway, and in all of these instances, I felt really violated and vulnerable. And from a victim's standpoint, I appreciated the Olison article mentioning the philosophies of punishment, which are retribution, incapacitation, deterrence, and rehabilitation. And I really believe that all of these theories, to some extent combined, is a necessary way to address crime and punishment, really. I'm a little hesitant on the retribution factor, but oftentimes when you're from a victim standpoint, you really want to see something done so that doesn't happen to you again and or to others. The images that come to my mind when I hear the word criminal, that is so many. Specifically, the first thing that I can think of are faces of people that I know, both perpetrators as criminals and also victims. I've done I've done extensive work on the streets, and also at Matthew House, which is a ministry for prisoners' families. I've had direct contact with inmates. I'm also a family member of an inmate currently, and I visit my brother here in the Monroe Correctional Complex every Friday, and I just see the faces of the men in there, and I don't necessarily see criminal, but I know they're convicted criminals, and so that's one of the things that come to my mind. Also, in my time at Matthew House, I really see the faces of the silent victims, I guess, of crime. Not necessarily the criminal itself, but it kind of goes hand in hand. You know, everybody has personal relationships and connections. And when a man goes to prison, there are other victims of his crime besides just the person he committed the crime against. Another thing is images of poverty come to mind. Poverty-stricken inner cities, gang activity, and sometimes even crimes committed out of necessities for survival. A lot of gang activity is rooted in that. Also, the faces of addiction. I've worked with the homeless in my community as well as on the streets of downtown Eastside Vancouver, BC, the same streets that Dr. Gabor Mate worked on. One of my mentors, I absolutely love him. And there they corral all of their quote-unquote undesirables into a 7x7 block area. And I just see, I mean, it's one of the most crime-ridden areas, but also one of the places that I've experienced the most immense community and love as well. So it's tough to narrow down, as I've seen crime intertwined with all of these different scenarios. Lastly, what biases do I have about crime? I don't believe that crime is a problem in and of itself. I believe it's a combination of a subset of problems, and such as poverty, addiction, and mental illness.